Hello and welcome to the ASPS International Residence Forum podcast. I'm Dr. Aleksandar Jovanović, plastic surgery resident at University of Belgrade, Serbia, and on today's episode we'll be diving into a topic that sits at the intersection of surgical training, academic growth, and innovation. It's clinical research in plastic surgery residency. Research in plastic surgery has evolved dramatically over the past 2 decades. As publication expectations rise, so too does the pressure to balance research with a demanding surgical schedule. On today's episode, we're lucky to be joined by the past ASPS president, Dr. Lynn Jeffers, Dr. Justin Sachs, and Dr. Helen to talk about clinical research in plastic surgery residency. I'll turn the mic over to let the Professor Jeffers introduce themselves.
Great, thank you. Thank you for having me today. I'm Lynn Jeffers. I'm a past president of the American Society of Plastic Surgeons. I am a plastic surgeon in private practice out here in California.
Thank you, Dr. Jeffers. And please, I'm gonna please Dr. Justin Sachs to introduce himself.
Hey, great. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Justin Sachs, and I'm the chief of the Division of Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery at WashU in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm also the vice president, finance and treasury of ASPS.
Thank you, Dr. Sachs, for being with us. And finally, I'm gonna ask Dr. Shan to introduce herself, please.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on the show today. I am Helen Shun. I am currently a PGY5 integrated plastic surgery resident at the Beth Israel Deaconess Program for Harvard Medical School. I have been researching on clinical outcomes and modifiable risk factors and happy to talk about it today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shant, for being today with us. I would like to start this important topic for us residents with a big picture. Why do you think the clinical research matters during the plastic surgery training, and what is the role that you think that is it plays in sharpening a board skilled residents? Please, Dr. Jeffers, can you start if you like?
Yeah, I think it's important to do research throughout the time. Of course, you've got people on this podcast that are a bit biased because we're all involved in research in one way or another. I got involved in undergrad, but to me, it's part of that scientific process and really trying to bring the specialty forward and to advance knowledge and advance our techniques. So to me, I love being a part of that. Also, it really encourages critical thinking, innovative thinking, as well as just understanding how, so to speak, the sausage is made so that you can critically evaluate the literature that comes out there. So for me, I believe that it's an important part of understanding plastic surgery, whether you do that for your entire career or not.
Thank you so much. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great, Dr. Jeffers. So, Dr. Sachs here, doing research during your residency or your fellowship or as a faculty member. So at WashU, we have 24 residents and research fellows, and we have a clinical research support staff that exists within the division. So it's really important to that we have a clinical research engine. And I think for individually as a resident doing research during their training period or as a gap year or in other time frames, maybe on electives or on vacations, what it does is it really helps you develop critical thinking about what we do. So I always say I'm a surgeon scientist. I think that Dr. Jeffers is a surgeon scientist and Dr. Shun is a surgeon scientist. So it really helps us develop our critical thinking and rigor as we look at things. I also think that doing research, asking questions, and looking at outcomes improves patient outcomes, because if you analyze a situation where you do a surgical procedure and you find that one surgical procedure is better than the other or a certain technique helps, I think you can improve patient outcomes by doing research. As Dr. Jeffers mentioned, I think it advances the field. So plastic surgery is a beautiful, grand specialty, that I think, the more research that we do, be it clinical or basic science or translational research, I think what by us publishing work in peer-reviewed journals, by us standing on the podium or showing off posters or discussing things on podcasts, it really advances the field of plastic surgery, which is, I always say is a head-to-toe cancer, trauma, and cosmetic specialty. And we work with all the specialties, so it really advances our field. And also, as a resident, I think it's important that you advance your career. So you're all going to go out and when you're done with residency, and you're going to look for jobs as faculty members, either on your own in private practice, or with a hospital, or with an academic unit. And I think it allows you to really advance your career. A published paper, a podium presentation. These are the tokens, or the currency of the realm for academic advancement. And so without that, you can't advance your career from assistant to associate, full professor, leadership opportunities. And also, I think finally, doing research really fosters kind of just curiosity and and kind of lifelong learning with all of us. So I think you have to question what you do, and then you have to write about it and publish it.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much. Can I also ask Dr. Shan if she has something to add to this?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely want to echo Dr. Sachs and Dr. Jeffers' sentiment here. I think as a surgical resident, it provides another dimension of education. So it really helps balance the day-to-day clinical duties and engages your curiosity, like Dr. Sachs had mentioned. And then also it just diversifies your education. So the community involvement and just widening your network has been a really big value with the clinical research during residency. So not just working with the faculty and getting to know them better, but also outside of your institute, and then at national, international levels at conferences too.
Thank you so much. I also think that it also helps a lot in the learning process, and diving into the topic that we are studying, and learning all day and having opportunity to work with different patients, different stories of patients and different diseases. It really helps that. As I can when we see your biography, you started your residency really time ago, and you have a lot of experience, and you achieved a lot of results during your young career. So my question would be for you, how do you think it's changed when you see yourself, like when you started and now? We're happy to have a lot of new technologies, data sources. Everything is really there for us that we can find really quickly. Can you just describe for us younger residents how it was when you started your research career?
Now we're
Dr.
gonna sound
Jeffers,
really
do you remember? Do you remember that far back?
Oh my
I don't.
gosh, we're gonna
I
sound
don't.
so old.
I don't. Remember. You go first, and then I'll go.
Okay,
Great question.
so when I started, there wasn't the internet. So first of all, so you had to do searches, and they would come out on a printout, and then you would go find the sources themselves. Then I remember that once we, had our results, and if we were going to be presenting, we would have to take what we were called the slides. We'd have to go to a specific place in the hospital, and they would make these slides with blue backgrounds and yellow or white writing, and you couldn't change it after that. And they came in these little slides, and then you'd have to put them in a carousel and take that to your talk. And then if you drop them, heaven forbid, then things would be upside down and so forth. So now I'm really dating myself. But the fundamental parts about research, the curiosity and the thinking about that, I don't think that has changed. It's just that the number of resources you can have, and the way how quickly you can get your background data is out there, and how quickly you can collaborate with people across the country so easily with Zoom, with emails, with co-working. That part has really accelerated. And I think that's the exciting part of it.
And I'll continue that. So Dr. Jeffers and I both trained in the same time, probably back in the 90s. And,
Yes.
just to agree with the PowerPoint presentations, I trained in New York City, Manhattan. I had to go get the slides developed at 47th Street photo, I would have to take the film and then get them developed. So there was no editing up until the last minute. So that kind of dates us. There was no internet back then. There was no email. There was no texting. If you wanted to do research, you had to go to the library. I trained at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City, and I used to have to go to the Gustave L. Levy Library and go up and find the primary research myself after using in the index cards and the Delaney cards and finding the primary sources. So we didn't have all that research at our fingertips to find the data. But I'll tell you what we had back then was the same questions. So the same questions were asked back then that they're being asked now. And so the idea of you and your residency program now, you have the great research is defined by great questions. So you have to define a great question and then do the research. The beauty of now, today, and the ability to access all the world's knowledge in literally 60 seconds using large language learning models such as ChatGPT or Claude or Grok or what have you. It's an amazing thing, I think, for people who are doing research. But it just goes back to the questions have to be good, and you need good questions. But the technology has changed immensely. I finished training in 2000, residency training in 2004, and then did research and fellowships after that. But I started in 98, finished 2004, and the research now is just so much more robust and rigorous because you can access the information so much quicker. And you can use these LLMs to help even refine some of the questions that you have. But you still have to understand what you're asking, and you still have to understand what the information is telling you. So there's still a lot of noise, and the key is refining that signal. But definitely, if you're doing research now, like in 2025 versus as a resident in 1998, you can be supercharged, and you really can take advantage of the technologies that exist.
In a way, though, don't you think it's a little bit harder now to sift through some of the not so great science because there's a lot more noise out there?
Yeah, I mean it's hard, but the thing is, there's so much access to so many primary resources, and what's beautiful about it is you actually have access to all the world's knowledge. So you're not just looking at one country's knowledge or one specialties. You're literally cross-referencing so many things. So the ability to do profound clinical research now at your fingertips, after an operation is really significant. So you have to take advantage of this technology now, and you can do it much easier and faster. Like I don't have to take time to go to the library to find sources. I don't have to get the sources. I don't have to photocopy the sources. The sources all exist literally on my phone or my tablet or my computer instantaneously. I think I'd love to hear what Dr. Shun has to say, because she's definitely you're Helen. You're a baby of the internet of AI. So let's hear what you have to say about this.
Yeah, no, I definitely echo those sentiments as well. I am only 5 years out from graduation, but what I have noticed, the big changes is what Dr. Sachs has mentioned, the emergence of more artificial intelligence, the chatbots, writing assistants, more refined search engines, and the large multi-institutional databases that are available now more readily, like Trinetics. Um, but the fundamental methodologies are all still intact, and it has been kind of hard to filter through all of the new information, and I do feel like a lot of the approaches and methods are still being clarified with the new technologies. So I feel like I do spend a lot more time just talking to emerging experts in these areas to figure out the best way to translate the methods with these new technologies.
Sounds like a great one that Dr. Shun can tell us what she does now, because she does a lot.
Dr. Jeffers. Yeah, so I feel like I'm pretty lucky. I'm at a training program where research by residents is really supported by the program and the faculty and is encouraged. And so when I first started residency, I knew that research was and will continue to be a big part of my career. And so as far as priorities go, it came secondary only to my clinical training. So based on my list of priorities, I would actually allocate specific times during the week, specifically for research. And we're really lucky we have post-call days. And so usually my post-call days are my research time, and then Friday evenings are my research time. That being said, though, I do think one of the biggest challenges is just with a really erratic and unexpected schedule, just trying to make meetings and I think just being really open to communicating that with the team, that sometimes you might be a little bit late or sometimes you might have to reschedule the meetings. Usually teams are pretty good at understanding that.
So I'll take the next part of this, and we have dedicated ability to let residents take a year off if they want during their training program here. People take dedicated clinical research years or basic science years. Residents during our training program, they're all required to have a clinical research project that they present at the end of the year. We have our James Barrett Brown Research Day. We're invited a visiting professor, and it's a big division-wide symposium. So they have to have a project that they present on a podium. So that's kind of baked into their process. We also have during the week something called Genius Time. So on Wednesdays is our academic conference day. So starting at 6:30 a.m., we have a hand-face drama conference, 7 to 8 grand rounds, 8 to 9 core curriculum. But from 9 to 11:30 for 2.5 hours every week, there's no clinical responsibility for the residents. So that allows many residents to do research during that time, or catch up, or ask questions and meet with faculty, or actually do the work. So we kind of have it baked into the program where we really kind of suggest you do some type of research and research project. But if you don't have that set up in your program, where the program is supportive of that, where they don't have an end year capstone presentation of a project, or they don't set aside time for you during the week, it can be very difficult. And so then it becomes, what do you do in the week, at night, and then the weekends? And, some will knock me, but I think there's, 7 days in the week for work, and there's 24 hours in the day. And, sleep is important, but I think if you're committed and passionate to your work, you can spend an hour or two a day doing this. And, an hour a day times, 7 days times 7 months gives you, a lot of hours. And so I think you can do this if you chip away at it. But it's really important that you're in a program that supports it. And just to go historical on this, Helen Shun actually, when she was a Hopkins medical student and I was there as a faculty member, she spent a year working in our lab with me specifically on many research projects. So she took a dedicated year. And if you PubMed Helen Shun and Justin Sachs, I think 13 or 14 papers that we published, out of that time together. So sometimes you have to take dedicated time to separate yourself to do that, and also you have to.
Yeah, it was like a genius year instead of a genius hour.
I think you went to a really important part, which is being intentional, just like you would with any other priority. If research was really important to you, you would make that time, as you would for any other priority for yourself. But it doesn't mean you have to take a year off. You can still fit in research. It's just harder to, in which case it becomes even more important that you find a place, if research is very important to you, that you find a place that supports that. So I would say that for any of your goals, whether it's research or something else, that you find an organization ultimately when you're done or during residency that would support the things that you find most important.
Thank you. Is there anything that Dr. Jefferson would like to add to this?
Oh, that was me. But I would also add that, and we could probably talk about this, but I would also add that during your residency, there's probably certain types of research that would be more amenable to a residency program, like ones that don't involve as much timed, that are time sensitive, for example, or have very really firm data points and so forth, so that you can have some flexibility in your when you work on your research.
Thank you for your answers. My next question would be, what type of research projects and the most feasible or impactful for residents is to take on in your suggestion, in your experience for us?
Yeah, and that's what I was saying, is that I think choosing your research project is important, depending on whether you're going to have dedicated time versus trying to fit it in between your clinical duties, and also depending on how long of a time frame you have. That should help you choose the type of research projects that you're looking at, whether there are time dated versus things that you can do on the off hours.
Yeah.
I think I'll take this first. So I think important projects are very clinically related. So things that patient patient safety, quality improvement projects. So things that can get done quickly. So maybe for example, hand washing before a certain procedure, extra hand washing. So you measure the outcomes at one point in time, and then you have an intervention, and then you measure the outcomes later. Things that you can do very quickly over a month, 3 months or 6 months, so that you can acquire the data quickly and put it together. Or a new technique where you measure the outcomes of a new technique in a surgical procedure, so you can kind of see the outcomes right there in the clinic rapidly, and then also acquire a lot of patients quickly into a clinical study. Or something where you're just kind of changing protocols, like length of stay in the hospital. Sending patients home after 3 days instead of 2 days instead of 3 days for like a free flap. So you can kind of see the outcomes in real time, and you're also living it and breathing it on the wards or in the clinic. So things that are very applicable to your practice, that you are excited about, that you can see the results of, and be involved with the data collection in real time. Those are helpful clinical projects. Those are the ones that I get involved with routinely, and also ones that I recommend for medical students and residents and fellows that are working with me in a short period of time.
Do you also think that mentorship is also important there? And is there any research traps that you should think that the residents should avoid?
Uh, so I think, there's different kinds of research projects, clinical, mostly computer-based work that's a little bit more flexible, or research projects that integrate more into your clinical day-to-day workflow. So I think the first 2 years, you're really getting a feel for what your days look like. And I would actually advise a lot of residents to get a feel for that workflow first before committing to any large projects, because if that workflow, if the project flows well with your day to day, then that's actually a great project. But, and I kind of learned this the hard way, if you have to do like clinical data points every 3 hours for like 3 days, that's probably not the best project for you as a resident. I do know some people who in residency did basic science research and lab-based research. I'm still not sure how they did it. They're amazing human beings, but again, it was a priority for them.
And I also want to go back to mentorship. I know all of us have benefited from mentoring, and I think that makes a big difference, especially in research. So finding that right mentor who's excited about the things you're excited, who's willing and invested, hopefully, in your advancement as well, that makes a huge difference in your research.
Yeah, mentorship is critical. So you need somebody that can take you from the beginning to the end of the project, who can guide you through the process, who can see the pitfalls, that can motivate you. Because if you don't have that person behind you helping you, the project could languish, and the project could start, not finish. And you need the resources and the time and somebody helping you get that project to completion. So mentorship is critical, especially for idea generation and the practicality of the clinical question.
For sure. And I think that ties into one of the pitfalls, which is sometimes people don't ask for help. They say everything's fine. You have a meeting and you say it's great. I'm working on it, but really you're stuck, and really not being afraid to ask for help when really that is research. It is a team effort, and your mentors and the other people on your research team can help you say, wait a second, I've tried that before. Don't do that. Try this. There are things out there. It is not a solo sport.
Yeah, definitely echoing off of that. I have benefited hugely from my mentors, including Dr. Jeffers and Dr. Sachs. And actually, one of the big pearls that Dr. Sachs gave me when we were doing research together is that most projects is driven forward by someone who wakes up every single day, and that's like their agenda. They're driving that a project forward. And I think one of the things I've learned in residency is just being really honest with myself about how much bandwidth I have for certain projects, and looking at the team that's involved for the project. What are the team members? Is there someone on that team that can drive the project forward every day? And what can I realistically give to this project?
Yeah, I mean what Dr. Shun said is so critical. The ability to say yes and also the ability to say no. You have to be able to say no to certain things so you can say yes to other things.
Thank you so much for pointing it out. I really agree with everything that you said, and also the team work during the residency, and the relation between residents is also important to empower each other, and there's also a mentor that also supports that. Now I would like to talk about your own projects during your residencies. Is there any specific clinical research or project that you've been involved that you would like to share with us, that you have some good memories or even some maybe bad experience that you would like to share with us?
Uh, yeah, I can start with talking about some of the work that I've been doing. I think the luxury in residency is that now you can really focus on projects that you're passionate about. And for me, I'm applying into microsurgery, and so the last few years I've been trying to work on more projects, specifically targeting microsurgery. And we're pretty lucky. We have a really robust research team of research assistants, and so. I do a lot more clinical based research now where if there is a question that merges in clinic, or if there's a question that merges in the OR, I'll bounce the idea off of the research team, and then they really are the machine behind a lot of the clinical projects that we end up doing. And I've always had an interest in surgical devices and surgical device development. And so another project I've been working on is in collaboration with the Harvard School of Engineering, and being able to work with some of the engineering students there to develop ideas.
Okay. How about would I also like to ask the same question, Dr. Jeffers and Dr. Sachs?
Yeah, I'm trying to think through my time, and I think this is important to say. You can be involved in many types of different research. I've been involved in things that are more wet lab, where you've got specimens that you're processing, you make slides, you stain them, you do monoclonal antibodies, trying to see what happens and trying to figure out a finding from that, as well as looking at prepared slides to look at the development of, in my case, soft pellet structures in throughout that time, trying to figure out what causes sort of the morphogenesis of cleft palates, for example, as well as going abroad and just going to different labs to see how they were. At that time was a bigger deal about doing palatal whole organ cultures. That was a fun thing as well. But then as my time matured, sort of referring back to what I said earlier, having less time to be able to go to a lab with timed endpoints and so forth, pivoted more to things that were clinical, things that had to do with outcomes, as well as looking at more recently technology and AI, and how that affects plastic surgery. So a full gamut of things that you can do throughout your career, and it just adjusts depending on what you are doing at the time. And again, to what Dr. Shun was saying, what your time commitment can be, that really makes a difference. But the underpinning of all of that is back to what Dr. Sachs is saying, the curiosity of like, I wonder why this is, or I wonder what the real finding would be for X, Y, and Z, because you want to know the answer, and that's really what drives everything.
That's a great response. And I was thinking about my training. So I did combined general surgery and plastic surgery. It was a combined program, so 3 and 3. And we had no 80-hour work week restrictions. So there was no work restrictions. So I never went home. I was on call all the time. And I was the only one in my year. I was at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City. I think now they have 24 residents. Back then we only had 5, and so we covered the whole system. And I just worked nonstop clinically. And I think I wrote one paper, midline cleft. It was like a retrospective review for a midline cleft paper with Lester Silver, who was the chief at the time. And then I wrote a book chapter on body contour surgery after massive weight loss, because we were doing a ton of massive weight loss patients. It was all laparoscopic Roux-en-Y's back then. And so I didn't have much time to do clinical research in my training, different than what our residents now have, where they have genius time and they're forced to do a project and they can take a year off. So what I did at the end of my training was I went to Pittsburgh, Department of Plastic Surgery at Pittsburgh, and I took 3 years off. So I finished my 6 years of training, and I went to Pittsburgh for year 7, 8, and 9. And I worked in the basic science lab for 3 years, and I also did a hand fellowship there. And then I did another PGY tenure at MD Anderson after that. So I was doing basic science and clinical research in my 7th, 8th, and 9th year full time. I was also a clinical fellow. So that was back then, because we didn't have that kind of protected time or focused time during residency. And it was the best move of my life to do that, understanding how to do basic science and clinical research, and kind of set my career up in a different trajectory had I not done that. So to just use myself as an example, had I not gone to Pittsburgh after Mount Sinai in New York, I would not have this role now at WashU, School of Medicine, St. Louis, being a leader, doing research all these years later, had I not done that research gap 3 years. And that's just because of the times. Like, we didn't have the ability to do the research during training because we never slept and we never left the hospital. And that's different now. It's literally you have to go home, and our residents get the day off the next day. So if you're up all night, you get the day off, and so you'll sleep, and then you should be able to do research and self-care and all the other cool things that people do nowadays. Avocado toast and all the culture stuff.
Actually, I also think it's worth mentioning too, now that I'm thinking of this, we're talking mostly here about basic science and clinical research, but now there's so many other opportunities as far as what Dr. Stein alluded to, which was translational research or even entrepreneurship and innovation that ends in med tech. There's a number of opportunities out there. There's also research that we haven't mentioned in academics as far as the education and how we train residents and how we train physicians, but also finally on health policy and how that affects what we do. So there are many more arenas that I think are quote unquote more acceptable from an academic standpoint than they were probably during the time that we trained.
Oh yeah, I mean, education research now is tremendous. You could be an educator, you get a PhD in surgical education, and that could be your line of research, and that's great stuff. How to teach, how to train. There's huge opportunities just in the evaluation for competency-based education across the whole world. We have to be better at training residents, and that's a whole opportunity to do research around that. And that's the kind of stuff that, it doesn't require a lot of time away from your training to do that.
Yeah, definitely. On the note of education and research, I think there's a lot of things that residents do in the day-to-day that could easily become research. So, for example, if you're putting together a microsurgery workshop for yourself and the other residents, you can just, add a couple of steps and make that into a research project as well, and share that with your other co-residents and peers around the country. The opportunity is definitely there.
I also agree with you, and I would like also to add that also nowadays, as this is also International Residence Forum that we are talking now, also international projects, international co-working and research. That is something that I would say it's much easier now for us to do in our residencies. I would also like to ask you, how has your involvement in research influenced your perspective on plastic surgery overall? All doing those basic science and clinical researches, all kind of research that you did during your residency, they have any impacts on your future career?
Was thinking about that. I mean, there's many different ways that it can affect your career. Number one, the most obvious ones are if you end up in, you start to do research, and of course, you end up in the academic career where you continue doing groundbreaking research. I, of course, am in private practice and didn't do that, but it was important to me that I continued to work on research in one way or another. So, being involved in clinical research in our post approval studies for some of our implants, as a medical monitor for one of them, there were other multi-site projects that I was involved in just because it was something that I was interested in doing. But I think from a personal standpoint, it really was a way of critically thinking about ideas and problems, but more broadly was really the connection with other people who were just interested in innovation and interested in answering questions and asking the whys. And that really, I think it was Dr. Shund who said this, but sometimes it gives you this other perspective beyond the thing that you're doing day to day, and it gives you a whole nother community and networking across the country to really have a lot of fun with. So for me, it's a sort of addition to the rest of my life.
Yeah, and I think that doing research just makes you better. And the some of the best surgeons in the world, and and there's always an exception, but some of the best surgeons in the world also do some of the best clinical research. And sometimes, you don't have to be a PhD level researcher with statistical knowledge. Even some of the best papers that I look at that I love to read are the single author papers of 50 cases or 100 cases of a surgical technique by one master surgeon. Because just the ability to critically review your work and ask a question is, did what you do change this outcome, make it better or make it worse? Those are sometimes the best clinical papers, like the single author where somebody is a master of their craft and they critically assess what they do. And you don't need a big research engine to do that. You just need to be able to document your results, take some pictures, and look back critically. So I think you could do research that way, or you can do, multi-institutional and higher powered research where you ask bigger questions and scale it to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of patients. But I do think that, being asking a question and then gathering data and analyzing data and then drawing conclusions from that data makes you a better surgeon and makes you a better clinician and makes you, just opens up your mind to different things, and just I think it just makes you a better person.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as someone who wants to stay in academia, I think it's been really helpful to look at research projects within every subspecialty and looking at my attendings in those subspecialties and trying to understand what a career would look like doing both research and the clinical work. And I've discovered that for some, I love the surgeries, but the research projects don't really light my soul the same way that others do. And so, microsurgery was the ultimate choice for me because I love the research side from a lot of the work I had done originally with Dr. Sachs and continuing to do here as well, but also the clinical practice. So finding that balance. And maybe as a resident, you find out that you don't like research, and that's totally okay. There's something else that you really, really enjoyed, but at least you gave it a shot and you kind of let that experience guide your next steps when you're planning your career. And I think for me as a resident, what's really, really refreshing and brings me a lot of happiness is being able to speak to other people about the research projects and getting a more diverse perspective. So we get a lot of visiting residents and faculty members from all over the world. And some of the best parts of my day is just talking to them, like hearing about how they do things, or going to a conference and meeting people from globally and just hearing the really awesome ideas that they have. And I'm just like, wow, like, how did we not think of that? Like, let's definitely try it. So I really do think it enriches and diversifies our education.
Thank you so much. I would also like to ask you about advices for aspiring researchers. Is there any advice you would give to current residents who hasn't been committed to research yet, or where to start? Also, I would like to mention PRS opportunities that like they can be peer reviewers or something like that. What do you suggest for the start?
I would suggest all of the above what you mentioned. I think being a peer reviewer is great. You get to read about the research. You get to create a structure of questions of how you analyze a paper. And once you do one, you get comfortable. Once you do 10 or 100 of them, you get even more comfortable. I think it's sometimes anxiety producing or daunting to jump into a research project to lead on your own. Find a research project that you could be a co-author on, where you could help write the discussion or help analyze the charts. Just be part of it and then learn the process of it. Go to research meetings at your institution. Find out who's doing research. Ask around and then join the project and show up. Nobody will ever turn away a researcher. And Helen Shun will tell you, we had a weekly research meeting, head to toe research meeting, where we listed all the projects on one page. And Helen was still doing it here at WashU 6 years later, after leaving Baltimore. And you just need to find people who are interested in asking questions and doing research. And there's always somebody out there who will be more than happy to show you the way forward. And don't be afraid if you've never done it before. And also, you have all these large language learning models. You can just ask the question, how do I do clinical research? It'll tell you, and then study it, and then implement it, and help people do the work. Just be part of a team, and you'll learn how to do it, and then jump into it.
Thank you.
I totally agree. I think sometimes people are intimidated, especially if you haven't done it and you think, oh my goodness, how am I going to back to what Dr. Shun said about drive some sort of project. You don't have to do that to begin with. See what other people are doing and see if you could help to start with. Or to Dr. Sack's point, if you can go to some of these meetings and see what projects are out there and which one of them, like Dr. Shun said, lights your soul, and you say, wow, I want to be a part of that, and which one of them are feasible for you to be involved in based on time or your expertise. And that's where the mentorship comes in. And don't be afraid to just cold reaching out to people you don't know just because you're interested in what they're working on. Like Dr. Sachs says, most people will not turn away somebody who wants to help them.
Yeah. And I think a main piece of advice for residents is that research should enhance your training, but not replace it. So at the end of the day, like, these are really valuable training years, and your priority should be your training and learning the surgeries and patient care. But the research is an important component for that as well and should be taken seriously. And one of my favorite things I've done during residency is getting more involved with the societies. And I definitely have to credit a lot of that to Dr. Jeffers and Dr. Sachs for helping me get involved there. And it's just helped create a new perspective for a lot of the work that's being done, but then also opening the door to a lot of different mentors and seeing what their practice is like, and using takeaways from that for what I envision for my future practice too.
Yeah.
I think
I can't tell you.
Oh, go ahead.
And let me just say this. I can't tell you, if you look at research papers through the years and you look at authors and co-authors, guaranteed that many of those people that worked on projects together on papers in certain places work together in the future. You build these bonds together with people that you do research when you ask questions and you do the hard work, and you're able to get a publication or a podium presentation. It's really what I would say. Clinical research during your residency is a networking opportunity at scale. because what happens is you build a network in your institution where you're doing research. Then you get to travel to another place at some point, present that research, and then you publish it and everybody reads it. And so your network is just expanded at scale. And so you should just do it. It's so
Just do
beneficial. It's so beneficial on so many levels that not to do it is detrimental to you, I think. And so it's important to dive into it in any capacity, even in the smallest of capacity.
And I think that was what I was going to say is just do it is a great attitude, because there's no better time to do it than residency before you leave, because depending on where you're going and what you're going to do, you may or may not have access to the fund and the resources of wherever you're training. Having said that, formal research isn't for everyone, and that's okay. You might do it and suddenly realize, you know what, I thought I wanted to do research, and actually this is not what makes me excited. This is not what I want to do, and that's okay too. But I would also argue that most of us, even if we don't do formal research, by the very nature of being plastic surgeons, we are curious by nature. And every day we embark in that sort of research mode where you're asking questions and answering. You just may or may not be publishing it, and you just may or may not be doing any formal research, but that's okay. That also contributes as well. I think just the exposure and trying gives you that mindset and gives you an understanding when you're evaluating it and when you're talking to people who are doing the research.
Thank you so much for everything you said. This episode has come to end, so I would like to thank you for really insightful conversation. And before we wrap up, what is one takeaway you'd want residents to walk away with about the value of clinical research in plastic surgery training and residency?
Just do it. Just do it.
Yeah, I'll say that again. I think, in life, it's always easy to say no, but sometimes, the hardest part is to say yes and engage. And I'm telling you, any part that you take in getting a clinical research project to a manuscript or to a podium presentation at a local, regional, national, international meeting, I think will change your life for the better. You'll remember it. You'll think differently. It'll make you smarter. It'll build your network. You'll help the team, and ultimately, what you'll do is, if it's really good research, you'll improve patient outcomes. If you can Google or PubMed or find a paper that helps you do a surgery better or teach better or do basic science experiment better, you've now made patients better. So I think everybody who's listening to this, get going, get started, don't stop, do clinical research, and just do it, as Helen said.
I'm going to modify that to say that think outside the box. Just try it. You might like it.
Thank you so much for your honest opinions, and it's really appreciated by residents for sure. I want to thank Dr. Jeffers, Dr. Sachs, and Dr. Shan for coming on today's episode to talk about clinical research in plastic surgery residency. I look forward to seeing more works from you on this topic, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Alexander. Thanks so much for inviting us and having us here. Great to hear everybody.